It's 2014, we're the 19th of December 2022, and I intend to record a relatively short video to introduce my new documents. I've made an upgrade and an update of my documents, and I just will briefly introduce them. But I begin by saying that I improve intellectually every waking hour, every day, because every experience that I encounter, whether it's a discussion, videos that I watch, books that I read, talking to people, or simply thinking, I incorporate this into my worldview and I reinterpret the past, I reinterpret the present, I interpret the future as well differently. So I improve intellectually. Most of the time I mature, not always, but I become wiser. Not always, but I can become wiser. Yeah. Also, I've discovered recently, over the past couple of weeks I might say, but more and more thoroughly, that I partly suffer from Asperger. It's a form of autism. Also schizophrenia, but Asperger is very important. I've watched videos and read passages from books written by biographies written by or biographical data told by persons suffering from Asperger, and it's a way of interpreting all my videos, actually all my past videos. To know this, it sheds a new light upon my development. I am partly autistic. Yeah, it has helped me a lot to. It's been a great relief. I will not play the victim card. I'm a person suffering from mental problems, etc., etc. Partly, but it helps me a lot to understand this. So yeah. Also, yeah, I will show the documents and I will comment. Yeah. So UPS. This is the logical structure of everything. That's the view of the concept. Every singular thing is precisely a singular which contains particular determinacies, which ties this object to a universal determinacy. I will not illustrate and comment because I've done this so many times, but let us take the example of fruits. Every singular fruit, an apple, an orange, a banana, a strawberry, a blueberry, a peach, a mango, a coconut, is a singular fruit which belongs to a particular variety: oranges, peaches, apples, strawberries, bananas, watermelons, etc., etc. And the universal would be the fruit. And the universal does not exist independently of its particularization and its singularization. There are no fruits in general, there are only particular varieties. And yeah, that's just, it works for everything. Everything can be classified using UPS. Yeah. Now I will show my ethics. And yeah, I talk while I move the table boards. The reason why I've been doing this is because I try to follow the teachings of Gandhi, namely, I wanted to make a joke, but I will not make the joke now. I will make the joke. It's a little bit dubious. Here's the joke. Gandhi, he's the guy who tried to get rid of the foreign elite who ruled over his country. Yeah, but I'm a German, so if I try to do the same, I might have problems. That's a joke. I mean, Gandhi is the guy who said, be the change you want to see in the world. And one of the things that I would like to see, or actually I don't care, but I think it's good and I know it's good, to show the full view of what people know when they speak publicly. And that's what I intend to do, to show my whole worldview in terms of the structure. Yeah, I try to provide the map of the whole of reality, and I intend to show my ethical standards and behaviors, part of them, what I call the phenomenal appearance of spirit, the phenomenology of spirit, logic, nature, and Geist. And let us begin with ethics, and also I will put in the description below the links to my 5 latest, most recently published videos, so that people can follow in a chronological perspective my development. And if they are smart to connect the dots, they will say, okay, if you improve intellectually every day, it means that in order to follow your development, we have to watch backward, and usually I incorporate more or less consciously, depending on my level of memory, all the previous steps into my current development. So yeah, so I would like people to be able to follow the thread of development of others when they speak publicly, to know how they develop. And if those might say, oh, you say contradictory things, here I will use the old trick. I'm partly a Hegelian. The philosophy of Hegel is an attempt to solve the contradiction. So I might say contradictory things depending on the moment in the process of unfolding, but I try to solve the contradictions in the most peaceful, most reasonable, most smoothest way possible. But overall, I try to find consistency in the process by refining, adjusting, correcting, etc., etc. And also, yeah, so I put the link to the 5 most recently published videos, knowing that I have 3 channels, so it might sometimes be difficult. But in the previous video that I recorded and published on the 3 channels before recording this video, I put the links to all my videos if people want to follow my development. So here is my ethics, very simplified. I try to order my days like this, not in this chronological order, but I try to follow this more or less consistent. It's very difficult because it's very exhausting, and I do not always have the time, but I have done this rather consistently through over the past many months. I study logic in order to structure and order my mind. I study psychology, psychiatry, and psychoanalysis by watching channels like Psych2Go, or stumbling upon motivational channels, or the videos of Mr. Peterson on YouTube. And I have learned a great deal about psychology and psychiatry, and it helps a lot to heal myself, to appease myself. And I recommend that people should do this as well, to take the time. Usually I take during my pause, or when I eat a meal, or when I wake up very early or in the middle of the night, I take 30 minutes, 45 minutes to watch psychological videos. Yeah. In terms of household management, so we have the mind, the soul, then the immediate environment. I clean my room and I order my immediate environment every day to live in a structured environment, although working brings about a disruption, but I try to maintain order and stability around me. I practice minimalism. I reduce my standards of living drastically. I need an internet connection and running water, one might say, the computer, the camera, etc. But otherwise, I reduce my standards of living to the minimum. I make supplies every day. I've done this for the past many months, and I recommend that people should do the same. Then about my neighbors, I try to favor cooperation. Yeah, it's good to have a good relation with one's immediate neighbors, because if it's mutual, reciprocal self-help. If people are more responsible, they are able to help themselves and to help others if they are responsible and autonomous to a certain degree, to a certain extent, for themselves. That's what I've tried to practice. It's not always easy because there are differences of generation, mentality, culture, etc. But yeah, it's good to favor cooperation. Yeah, mutual, reciprocal self-interest. Yeah. By encouraging people to be responsible, by sharing tips and pieces of advice, etc., etc. In the larger environment, the town or the city, I have cleaned the streets every day for the past, I would say, at least 2 months, maybe more. And here's an example. What I've picked up just today. The gloves that they are from me, but the rest, I was out for about a couple of hours, and I've had the opportunity to pick up all this trash. These are mostly cigarette butts. Do we see? Cigarette butts, all sorts of trash that fill the streets of German cities. Look what the French did to Germany. And here, people might be tempted to say, hey, but who is this person? He cleans the street for free. Surely he's the good guy. Not completely, because the counterpart, of course, I work for free, but the counterpart is that the rest of the day, I've already said it, I study books like this. Jeez. Maybe I will invest in a new camera, because, yeah. The rest of the day, I read books like these, which give the theoretical reasons why the streets are filled with trash. And sometimes, it will be shown, I do not buy newspapers any longer because of pollution, but sometimes I buy magazines when it looks interesting. And here's a right-wing conservative magazine in France, Valeurs Actuelles, and the title is the France Third Worldize, the third worldization of France. It's kind of derogatory in a Western country to say that it's becoming like the third world, because it means that the standards of living are drastically being reduced, blackout in the country, poverty, problems with the hospital and the healthcare system. The school system is a mess. There are rats in the cities. The trains are not functioning. Who are the real people to be held accountable for the French decline? This is so it's just an illustration of the circulation of information. People can become aware in real time that France is becoming a third world country. It's not an insult. There are not only dysfunctioning in third world countries. Economically, most of the time it's problematic, but here it's kind of in a derogatory sense. France is declining. So, but the rest of the day I seek to understand, like I said, the theoretical reasons, and only the Americans, or overwhelmingly the Americans, enable to give the solid theoretical structure to help understand why it is so. It's not enough to read these two books, but these are the economic and psychological reasons which explain partly. Also, then I buy overwhelmingly at local businesses. I've made a few exceptions for. I had stopped buying at Amazon for many months. I have consistently and constantly favored local businesses over the past many months, but I made a few exceptions for outstanding books that I will talk about later. Also, what did I write? I give food stamps. I've been consistently distributing food stamps for between 10 and 30 euros each day in various local businesses. I buy food stamps to encourage people to eat organic, local products. Organic food, local products, better for the health. It's better for the local economy. And if you have followed UPS, if more people did this, it would strengthen all the local economies of all the areas where people practice this, all over the world eventually. It would be better for everyone. And I distribute good books. I try to distribute really good books. It's very difficult to find good books in French French bookshops, because the intellectual level of a country like France has declined significantly, unfortunately. But I try to distribute good books. I have distributed hundreds of books worth of thousands of euros. Then I try to promote communication with my biological family, to promote communication with my spiritual family, and every person has a biological family, although sometimes all the persons are deceased, but everyone is the descendant of a biological family, and the spiritual family, in the ordinary sense, these are the family that one chooses, the wife to marry, and eventually, in a broader sense, the friends, the connection that one chooses, and in a more higher sense, it's really spiritual. I have tried to do this. Maybe I haven't done this enough, but I have done this over the past few weeks, a month, and I will still continue to do so. On the level of the country, I follow the news. So every day I follow briefly the news of France and the US predominantly. But with the access to the internet, actually the news, they are global. So it's the news of civilization. In my singular case, my civilization is Western civilization, and I happen to be able to read and understand English and French and partly German. So of course I have a Western perspective on the world. It's an opening and a closing at the same time, because it is limited by the lens of the Western world, but also it is broad because it's the wealthiest civilization in terms of intellectual life. It's the most rich, the wealthiest is not the problem, the richest, yeah. And the world at large, of course, by watching the news, one has daily news about the situation in Asia, in Africa, Southern America, Australia, the Middle East, Northern America, Europe, etc., etc. And finally, I practice philosophy, which means to apply all the aforementioned steps, and many more, but all the aforementioned steps, plus to read books intelligently, to watch videos and to extract the greatest ideas, and to share knowledge, which is precisely what I'm doing with this video. That's the first line of it. I have practiced this consistently, not with the same degree of intensity each step, but consistently over the past many months. And if more people acted like this, they would be more balanced on a singular level, which would bring stability at all levels. Also, I do not consume any of this. Alcohol in green, it's a German beer, it's okay. If it's German, if it's not too much, to drink a little bit of German beer, that's okay. Yeah, but what about the Bible, the Quran? Look, if it's Germany, we shall make an exception. No pornography, no drugs, no gambling. No drugs, I wrote, what if your love is my drug? Let's make an exception for love. That's a song by Kesha. Your drug is my love. No, your love is my drug. Yeah, I will put the link about the song by Kesha. No gambling, no TV, etc., etc. I haven't bought newspapers for many months because it pollutes, but exceptionally I buy a magazine because it's higher quality. Of course, about the World Cup, that's great that Messi won the World Cup, but the people who complain about the working conditions of the workers in Qatar and then who watch the World Cup, that's contradictory. Not in a good sense. Sometimes contradiction is good, but here it's just contradictory. So I will not pretend that I care a lot about the working conditions of the workers, but I cannot be accused of sustaining the system, etc., because I don't care about football. I used to when I was younger, but I have grown up, and to grow up, to mature, to become an adult means to focus one's attention on more serious topics when the conditions are not met. So that enjoyment can be applied on a global scale. What I mean is, it's okay to have entertainment and fun and even to be a little bit childish sometimes, if the conditions enable it so. The situation on a world stage, it's not adequate to have entertainment of this kind while there are conflicts and wars and etc., etc. Here it's a little bit of a leftist virtue signaling, moralistic, etc., etc. Maybe, maybe. But I haven't watched the World Cup and I don't really care. Good for the people who find enjoyment, but then don't be moralistic. Yeah, if you participate, don't pretend that you care, because yeah, no jewelry, no luxury, no casual sex, etc., etc. So yeah, if more people acted like this, the economy would be drastically reduced for the good, and the health problems would be reduced for the good. Yeah. Here it's part of my minimalistic self as well. I don't have any of this. I try to consume as the least amount of wrapping, packaging as possible. Sometimes I have to make an exception, like ordering on Amazon for really good books that cannot be found at local bookshops, or really materials or objects or tools that I cannot buy locally. So there are exceptions. But overall, I try to reduce the amount of electricity, oil, gas, planned obsolescence, etc., etc. I don't go to the hairdresser. I have no hairdryer. I do not consume fat, sugar, or industrial food. Sugar in the forms of honey, locally produced, because really a strict diet in winter time, it really is counterproductive, because I tried to do this up until a couple of weeks ago and I was really exhausted. So I have started to eat a little bit more sugar. Not in the form of sugar, but in the form of honey or fruits, the natural sugar in the fruit, etc., etc. Just to have enough energy. Yeah. So I try to adapt the standards when they really become counterproductive. But otherwise, I do not own any of this. I have given up all that I had, and I will no longer buy these kind of objects. Now, still in the realm of ethics, I used to eat raw fruits and vegetables for many months, plus bread, oil and salt, etc. But with the winter times, I still eat overwhelmingly fruits and vegetables, but I have started to buy cooked fruits and vegetables sometimes, and hot soup, just because otherwise it's counterproductive. I had a loss of energy. I was weak and tired and exhausted up until a couple of weeks ago, and I started to eat more cooked vegetables and fruits and hot meals sometimes. Yeah, and it has strengthened my diet, which has helped me to focus better, to be more productive, etc. So I still have a minimalist diet, but I have adapted a little bit. I use organic hygiene products. I have given away most of my clothes, and here this beautiful sweatshirt that I've bought recently is second-hand. That's I bought this at a local solidarity shop. People, as far as I know, they give away clothes, and it's for people who want to buy second-hand clothes or who have financial difficulties, which is not my case. But I said to myself, if I have to buy clothes, they will be second-hand. That's what I did. I promote local solidarity. It's an initiative from citizens. It's independent from the states. It's local initiative, which is what I call the American ethics. By the people, yeah. The welfare state tries to buy the people, B-U-Y, but it's wrong because it brings corruption, moral decadence, etc., etc., dependency. So do not buy the people, but build liberty by the people, B-Y, not B-U-Y, because the welfare state is counterproductive, destructive of morality, collective intelligence. Economically, it's destructive at all levels. So yeah, I try to promote this sweatshirt, really nice. It's you pick up the piece of clothes that you are interested in, you give the amount of money that you seem is fair. I gave 15 euros because I can afford to as of now, but it's really nice. It's second hand. That's a great initiative, and I promote what I believe in. So I have made I will contribute to this kind of initiative I have, and I will keep yeah, because that's really a great a great initiative if people were more self-entrepreneur, more self-initiatory in the realm of ethics and help, the welfare state would disappear progressively. Yeah. I make supplies, I encourage local businesses, I reduce the trash drastically, I work as hard as I can. For the past couple of weeks, I have reduced my amount of work because I have been really exhausted after having worked very intensely for 10 months with almost no rest. But I have found a new strength, a new vitality. So yeah, but I intend to take a few days of rest, but to use them to work in a way. But yeah, I've taken cold showers consistently for many months. I've started using dry toilets. I do not flush the toilet any longer because I bought German dry toilets. It's very efficient. I will talk about this later in another video, but that's very useful. So I do not flush the toilet any longer because I don't have to. I pick up the trash in the street when I walk outside for 1 or 2 hours a day. I practice minimalism. I have given away books daily for many months. I have given hundreds of books, really high quality books. I've made donations in the form of food stamps, donations to Wikipedia, the Ron Paul Institute, or the YouTube content creators that I believe in. And I practice introspection, mostly the channel Psych2Go. So I have acted, with the exception of the diet that I have slightly modified because of winter time, I have acted consistently for many weeks, many months. Yeah, so I'm at peace with my ethical behavior. If more people acted like this, do we see? I guess we see UPS on a singular level. I do what I think is right. It's Kantian ethics. Kantian ethics means, can it be universalized? What if more people, or what if the principles which drive my ethical behavior, what if they were universalized? What would be, can they be universalized? If the answer is yes, then they are ethically right, and all or almost all the things that I've acted on the principles which have driven my behavior, they can be thought to be good in the Kantian sense. Here is what I call the Phenomenology of Spirit. I have reworked this document yesterday and today to improve. It's structured logically, and it shows the intellectual and spiritual life overwhelmingly of the Western world, but actually it's the world because knowledge by its very nature, science, is universal, and consciousness is universal as well, although it becomes aware of itself through the mediation of singular and particular individuals. So I will just here make a brief philosophical comment that I have understood recently because I improve every day. I can appear very weird to others because spontaneously mean the first moment. Usually, not always, but usually I have a non-judgmental approach to reality, namely when I encounter a phenomenon. Of course, I can react on an instinctive level, negatively or positively, but when I take the time to think, I try not to be too emotional. I try to, it's not always easy because I have emotions as well, but I try to think, not in terms of good or bad, not spontaneously, but to try to understand. That's Spinoza's philosophy, very simplified, is before judging or before qualifying things as being good, bad, positive, negative, useful, useless, etc. First, try to understand. I have always functioned like this. I mean, always, since for almost 10 years now. And I've realized very recently that actually very few people do this. People spontaneously, most of them, they judge. It's bad, it's negative, it's good, it's positive, etc. Yeah, but of course it's good to judge adequately at some moment, but first try to understand. And this view, which for me is, I would say common sense. No, precisely it's not, but for me it's common sense, but for the overwhelming majority of people it's completely alien. But just to think and to try to understand before judging in a sense of good or bad, predicating a moral judgment. Just to understand, it's the first moment. Because if you judge something that you don't understand, your judgment will not be correct. Yeah. So yeah, I like this, I like that, I enjoy this, I enjoy that. Yeah, good for you, but usually what I do is I try to understand. Let us take an example. Donald Trump. In 2016, when he got elected, or when he was on the rise, people, the overwhelming majority of journalists, intellectuals, and politically correct people, they say, oh, evil, deplorable, etc., etc. Yeah, but first try to understand why the phenomenon Trump, I'm not talking about the individual, I'm talking about the idea or the spirit that he embodies, why has it become manifest? Try to understand. And the overwhelming majority of people, they judge in a sense of good or bad without being able to understand, which means that their judgment is worthless philosophically. It has an impact socially, and I have to apply my own teachings. I have to try to understand why people judge without taking the time to understand, and here to be socially accepted because they are intellectually limited, because they do not have the time, because they are too emotional, because cultural decadence, because that's partly human nature, because it enables to have discussions without being too intellectual, sounding too intellectual. Yeah, but it's not really interesting. So yeah, so here, this document, I explain because I have understood, that's part of my daily improvement, I've understood that a lot of people do not understand. Here, I show what is happening in the Western, it's predominantly in the United States of America. Actually, the singular would be the US, the particular would be Western civilization, namely it's valid for every Western country, but actually it's on a world scale in a certain way, because the ideas which are being developed are universal. So it is structured logically. I will just talk about the determinacies. Sociobiology, demographics, anthropology, it's logically structured. Sociobiology brings about demographics, which is anthropologically determined. Physiognomy, it's physical appearance on an individual level. So all these four determinations, they are of the soul, they are anthropological. Then we have psychoanalysis, psychology, psychiatry. So these are the determination of the individual soul. We have self-consciousness, the universal self. These are determination of consciousness. The psyche, it's partly psychological. It's the soul in the broadest sense. Then language, mind, and education. That would be psychology in the sense of the mind rather than the soul. Morality, Sittlichkeit, it's a German word for customs and collective behavior. Morality would be singular, Sittlichkeit would be collective morality in a way, or collective ways of life, customs, etc. Rights, it's law, legislation, a right. Politics, economics, sociology. Communication, geopolitics, and religion. And each determination contains in itself all the previous ones. And now, broadly, I comment briefly. Usually, I begin with Democrats and Republicans, just to illustrate, but it's valid for every Western country, and eventually for most democratic countries, and eventually most countries, because there are opposition in all countries, even in totalitarian ones, there are branches or wings or etc. But here let us take the case study of the US, the Democrats and the Republicans. Usually the determinations which are found on the left, they coincide with the democratic mindset, and on the right with the Republican mindset. It's really simplified. So in the realm of sociobiology, we have R strategy versus K strategy. That's a sociobiological jargon. A lot of offsprings with low investment for the R strategist, and fewer offspring with higher investment for the K strategist. Females and males, usually the Democrats, they are more feminine, and the Republicans more masculine, the left and the right. Usually, there are counterexamples, there are soft right-wingers and hard leftists, but usually the tendency is more feminine on the Democrat. It's not about quantitative determination. I'm not saying that more women vote for Democrats and more men for Republicans. No, I say that the values, there are more female values on the left and masculine values on the right. Demographics, here we do not see very well. Privileged white boomers, stupid white teenagers, and non-white immigrants. These are the demographics of left-wing politics in Western countries. So old, privileged white people, stupid, young white people, and non-white immigrants. And here we have poor old whites, usually, rebellious white youth, and westernized immigrants. It's not a judgment. It's, judgment in a sort of moral judgment. That's the usual demographic trend. In realm of anthropology, we have anti-racism on the left and usually racism on the right. In terms of physiognomy, usually, it's not a moral judgment, but usually people, they are more unattractive on the left and more attractive physically on the right. It's not to say that they are bad on one side and good on the other, but usually there are explanations, economic explanations. People, when they suffer economic hardships, their physiognomy tends to be more degraded. People, when they are more privileged biologically, they have more success. So when they have more success economically, they tend to be more on the right, etc., etc. So it can be seen that usually the most attractive people, they are on the right, but they are counterexample because they are very physically attractive persons. The leftist elite, usually they are on the left, but it's a broad tendency. It can be noticed by attending political rallies or just watching videos. In the realm of psychoanalysis, usually passivity and immaturity, they are more on the left, and responsibility and being active, which are masculine qualities, they are more on the right. Also, I comment this as I should have commented this earlier, but maybe the zeitgeist is switching towards the right. I'm not saying that it's good or bad as of now. I'm just saying that this is what happens. There's a shift towards the right. This explains the intellectual, political, spiritual life of the West in the 21st century, and especially in the 2010s. Also, in realm of psychology, usually on the left we have envy, resentment, and jealousy. These are the fundamental negative psychological traits of leftists. And on the right, it's usually arrogance, pride, and anger. These are also kind of negative. It can be negative. In the realm of psychiatry, you have masochism on the left and sadism on the right. Usually, the opposite can be true as well, but usually that's how it functions. Self-consciousness, we have virtue signaling and hypocrisy. Usually they go hand in hand, not always, but on the left. And misanthropy and recognition on the right, namely, the leftists usually they want to signal their virtue to climb the social ladder and access a higher status and to become full members of a social group. And the right-wingers, they seek the recognition in an aristocratic way. It's about honor, respect, etc. Here it's more about signaling one's own morality. It's partly tied in a sense. Recognition and virtue signaling, they are kind of united, but on the left usually they signal their virtue, on the right they practice their virtue. That's why leftists usually they tend to be hypocrites, and the right-wingers they practice their virtue, but they notice that very few people do this, which makes them misanthrope and cynical. The universal self, the leftists they identify with the whole of mankind, usually that's cosmopolitanism, although there can be identity politics, but when it comes to white people, usually they are universalist. On the right, they are more patriotic, meaning they identify with the nation, the ethnic group, etc., etc. So it's more, it's the particular on the right and the universal on the left. The psyche on the left, they are more emotional. On the right, they are more rational. So emotion versus reason. The heart versus the mind. They are more extrovert on the left and more introvert on the right. Usually, there are a counterexample. Donald Trump is kind of extrovert. But usually that's how it works. In the terms of language, we have newspeak on the left, political correctness, if you will, and trash talking on the right. There can be trash talking on the left. But usually when they use newspeak, it's to fit the moral standards set by the left. But usually, the trash talking people, they are more on the right, and the political correctness, newspeak, etc., it's usually on the left. The mind, on the left wing, they insist upon multiple intelligence, emotional intelligence, musical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, verbal intelligence, social intelligence, etc. On the right, they insist upon analytical, logical, quantitative determination of intelligence, which is very well measured by IQ. That's how usually people envision this. Education, the child at the center, and here it's more the educational standards. So it's here the teacher has to adapt to the child. Here it's the children who have to adapt to the standards in terms of classical education, Greek, Latin, the classics of Western tradition, Christianity, the great writers, the great poets, the standards, the scientific standards of the Western tradition. Usually these are the right-wingers. People can be leftist politically but have right-wing education nonetheless. It's not if some people have some determinacies of one side or the other, it's not necessarily all of them. There can be a perfect leftist and perfect right-wingers, but in the sense that they would have all the determinations, but usually there can be a very attractive leftist who do trash talking and who insist upon patriotism. But it's kind of rare. But there can be right-wingers who are very emotional and who are masochistic. It's kind of rare as well. But these are just broad tendencies. In the realm of morality, on the left we have usually promiscuity and sometimes degeneracy. On the right, usually they promote virtue and marriage. Feminism on the left, Michéa, men get their own way. On the right, here again, I'm not saying one is good and the other is bad. There are some positive within certain aspect of feminism, usually right-wing feminism, and the Michéas, they can be very negative for them and for society. So it's not a moral judgment. I just explained how it is structured. In terms of satisfaction of one's own desires, immediate gratification, so to satisfy one's own desire in the short term on the left, and delayed gratification to think more long term on the right. But it can be reversed. The ecologists on the left, if they are honest and sincere, usually they have delayed gratification, and some people on the right, they are patriots just because they want higher standards of living for their own ethnic group or for their own citizenship without regard for others, so that there can be short-term gratification on the right as well. Sittlichkeit, which is customs, the woke ideology or cultural Marxism on the left, and traditionalism on the right. And again, the movement of Geist, the movement of Spirit, is a switch towards the right. This is what happens every day, which has happened for the past years, decades. But it intensifies with the internet. Usually, victimhood and tolerance are promoted by the left, and hierarchy and oppression by the right. In terms of rights, equality, collectivism on the left, usually individualism and liberty on the right, but there can be right-wing collectivist and left-wing individualist as well. Censorship is usually on the left and free speech on the right, but there are usually, not usually, but sometimes pro-free speech leftists and pro-censorship right-wingers for moral reasons. But usually that's the broad tendency. In terms of politics, centralism, the central state, and dependence on the state or on a collective political organization on a broader scale on the left, and autonomy and or federalism, usually they go hand in hand, a wider distribution of power on the right. Democracy is a leftist ideal, aristocracy a right-wing ideal. In the realm of economics, we have usually Marxism and socialism on the left, free market and or libertarianism on the right. The welfare state usually is on the left, or supported by leftist politics, unintentionally, sometimes maybe, but that's the effect. And the critique of central banking, usually it's on the right, but it can be the opposite. There can be pro-welfare states on the right, the neocons, and critique of banking on the left. So here it can be inverted, like some other determination. Protectionism, usually it's on the left, and free trade on the right. Then again, usually that's how it is historically, but sometimes the protectionists, actually most of the time in some European countries, the protectionists, they are on the right. And the leftist elite, they are pro-free trade. So it depends. Yeah. In terms of sociology, the fundamental sociological determinations in the modern 21st century Western world, the elites and the underclass, they are on the left. They spread their values. The elites, they rule through morality, by their moral, by claiming moral superiority through virtue signaling, and buying the votes through the welfare state. And on the right, usually, these are the working class and the middle class. So the passage from Obama to Trump, or from Clinton, Hillary Clinton versus Trump, it's on the left, the Democrats, Clinton, these are the elites and the underclass, and Trump, the working class and the middle class. And the only line of defense of the Democrats is to say, you are evil, you are deplorable, etc., etc. But this is what happens. I simplified, but yeah, populism is simply, it can be economically, it can be, and sociologically, it can be interpreted by the revolt of the middle class, the lower middle class and the working class against the elites and the underclass. Yeah. And one means of defense from the elite is to use morality to blame, to shame, to guilt those who want to advocate their economic interests. This is partly an economic interpretation. There is also, of course, the demographic interpretation, and the two, they coincide actually. Communication, the mainstream media, they are overwhelmingly on the left, and the alternative media predominantly on the right. Ecology is usually on the left, and technology on the right, but a lot of great innovators, they are leftist, and coherent ecologists, usually they are right-wingers. Then in terms of geopolitics, the deep state and the secret services are opposed to conspiracy theories, but the conspiracy is the entire process unfolding. Yeah. Globalism, usually it's on the left, and there's a revolt which brings about a nationalist revival. And in terms of geopolitics, there is an opposition between the South and the North. Poor countries, they are from the South, overwhelmingly. Rich countries, they are in the North. And the demographic immigration trends, this is usually people from the South crossing the sea or the borders to go to the North, either in the US or Canada, or in Europe, in Western continental Europe. And there is an opposition between East and West. The West, those who defend the traditional values of the West, these are usually the values on the right, but actually sometimes on the left as well. But here, it means the modern West is on the left, because the modern version of the West, as it has been promoted, is precisely globalism, the welfare state, equality, the woke ideology, feminism, cosmopolitanism, anti-racism, tolerance, etc., etc. This is what the modern West has become, which is not the historical West. And so it's partly an opposition between modernity and tradition, but in the modern context, tradition is more on the east side, Russia, China, etc., etc. Yeah, that's partly one way of interpreting the geopolitical oppositions, etc., etc. And finally, atheism, usually it's on the left, and faith, whether it's Christian or pagan, usually is on the right. Now, I will show briefly the entire process again. So this is simply a more determined version of a document that I've shared over and over. It helps clarify, situate. Yeah, so here I'm not judgmental, I can be, but I just explain what is happening every day in the news, in the books which are being sold, the political elections, the change of consciousness. It's simply a switch from the left to the right, because, yeah, I explained very simply, over the past many decades, there has been a trend towards ever more on the left, and of course there's a revolt which is logically determined to restore some balance, which explains for demographic reason, but also for economic reason and for moral reason, that the leftist trend has to be balanced by switching back towards the right. This is what explains the intellectual, political, and spiritual life of all Western countries, but actually by switching towards the right, spirit produces knowledge, which by its very nature is universal. Knowledge about ethnic differences, knowledge about psychology, about IQ, about education, about economics, etc., etc., about the history of nations, etc., etc., about religion. The religion is the process of reconstructing identity by going through these steps. And what people call the red pill, usually it consists in going through and acquiring knowledge about most of the right-wing topics, but because they are connected logically to the left side, it's to have a full view. This is what happens. I could simplify more, I can complexify more, but here I think it's the perfect balance, as of now at least, between accessibility and complexity for the sake of intelligibility. So this document is really good. Here I'm confident in my ability to produce good quality not when I want to, but when I know I have to in a way, or when I choose to. And here it's really good quality because it really helps clarify, simplify, and people can understand themselves and their opponents, and to understand that they are determined by their opponent, and that they can only become conscious of themselves by opposing an other. So they acquire self-identity by rejecting the other, whether from the left to the right or the right to the left, and both are in a conceptual unity. But what happens in the West and in the world at large is a switch towards the right. This is the fundamental spiritual determination of our day and age. Yeah. Now I will make a short pause, drink a glass of water. Here I will not comment, these are the logical determinations, not all of them, but the most fundamental. Fundamental is the determination of essence, that's Grund. The categories that people use daily, whatever their language is, whatever their level of culture, unconsciously they use these categories to order their relationship to reality. These are the categories which structure the mind and also reality. I will not comment, people can see, just given like this, it doesn't make a lot of sense, it has to be commented and understood. It's like a Mendeleev's table of chemical elements. There's an inherent underlying logical structure, not all are present, but the most simple and the most useful, for example UPS, it's under Begriff, positive and negative, identity difference, diversity. So these are the logical categories which structure everything basically. This is the mind of God, simplified. And now I will drink a glass of water. That I appreciate. Okay, now a little bit of promoting books. David Graeber, Bullshit Jobs, Zero Down Your Debt, Water Survival Guide, Daisy Luter, survivre à l'effondrement économique, survive the economic collapse, Piero and Giorgio, how to be ready against economic problems. Prepper's long-term survival guide, Jim Cobb. The Pantry's primer, Daisy Luter. Now about education. Real Education by Charles Murray. There's a serious problem with the American educational system, but with all educational system of all Western countries, and eventually in the entire world at large. There are countries where it's less bad than in America, or France, or Germany, or England. But usually in the Western countries, it's deplorable. Yeah, dumbing us down. So people can become aware that if they have gone through the Western educational system, they probably have been turned into idiots. Here are French example. The factory of the idiot. The teaching of ignorance. Your children will not be able to read nor to count. Yeah. What do I do? On a singular level, I practice what I preach. I've made countless videos to try to make the educational system great again, and I've put the links. Yeah. So these are the books. I will show the other books later. So now, yeah. So this is. Logic, the building blocks of reality. These are my working documents. And here are my new documents. So the document about logic I haven't modified. It can be complexified, but it's already too complex, I guess. You know, it's not too complex, it's complex enough. And here is the view of nature. I have reworked this document to be more thorough in a way. So what is nature? In order to answer satisfactorily, here it's more or less logically structured. It can be improved, it's not very rigorous, and here I mean this. But it begins with mechanics, in logical order, geometry, relativity, which is space-time, quantum physics, which is matter, mass, gravity, etc., mechanics, which deals with movement, speed, force, the forces, gravitational force, inertia, impact, pressure and fall, weight, friction, acceleration, gravitation. Astronomy is the movement of the celestial body, so that's celestial mechanics in a way, and cosmology, that's the history of the cosmos, in a way. So these are the most abstract, from space, empty space, that would be geometry, and space-time, that would be relativity. Then quantum physics, that's the study of matter and the interactions of atoms, and the movement of physical objects, that's mechanics. And here these are celestial objects, so it's the most abstract. And here what is called physics is more concrete, more the determinations of mechanics are contained within what here is called physics, but they are more qualitative in a sense. So here we have optics, which is the study of light, but it's not just the study, it's the structure of reality. Light, the stars and the sun, they emit light. We have the various elements here, that's more of a traditionalist view, air, fire, water, earth. Chemistry in terms of properties, the properties of objects. So here that's a qualitative view of chemistry, specific weight, density, cohesion, rigidity, malleability, etc., etc. So matter on a quantum level produces on a macroscopic, the microscopic produces on a macroscopic level properties of the physical world. And here are a few examples: the density, the rigidity, the malleability, the cohesion of objects, etc. Acoustics is the study and theory of sounds, yeah, but sound waves are present everywhere. They are not necessarily heard. There are various frequencies, but like light, it depends on the wavelength. Thermodynamics is the study of energy and work, heat and temperature. Then there is electricity and magnetism. Alchemy, qualitative chemistry, smell, taste and flammability, and chemism. Here that would be more the physico-chemical reaction. So the physical world is determined by all these properties. Physical objects, most of them, or if not all of them, contain all these determinacies. And here it's the realm of organic physics. So organic physics, here I've ordered, in my view, it can be modified partly, but that's my current view. It contains within itself all the previous determination, but here we have what would be called the earth sciences. So in order to understand planet Earth, one has to understand planetary geology, climatology, meteorology, seismology, volcanology, geology. I don't need to explain, I think, what it deals with. Mineralogy, oceanography, hydrology, that's the study of inland water, like lakes, rivers, etc., ponds, etc., and geography, or topography. So the study of the Earth. In order to study the planet Earth, one has to study all these aspects. And within each aspect, of course, all the previous ones are contained. Namely, the Earth is an astronomical and cosmological object, subject to the laws of mechanics, made of matter, etc., subject to gravity, etc., and all the physical elements which are contained within planet Earth. There are, of course, light, sound, energy, electromagnetism, chemical qualities, etc., etc. Then, these would be the life sciences. We have biology, genetics, bacteriology, mycology, botanics, ecology. Here's the simplified classification of modern biology. And here, zoology in a broader sense, namely paleontology, which is the studies of all the animal forms, zoology, ethology, which is the study of animal behavior, anatomy and physiology, which is the study and the structure of animal organism, the neurosciences, the study of the brain, taxonomy, the classification of species, pharmacology and medicine, the study of the medical properties and how to apply them to cure organisms, humans and animals. So that's the view of nature. And in order to understand the whole of nature, one has to understand each part, at least in its fundamental determinations. And animals that belong to zoology, they belong to an ecological environment which is determined by all the previous determinations. It's a document which helps think correctly and rigorously about nature. It doesn't seem much, but actually it can be improved, modified, etc. Of course, the order is not always accurate, one might say, but the fundamental determination, they are all present in every textbook about physics, chemistry, the earth sciences or the life sciences, that which we call biology. It can be classified somewhere to give a broad perspective. And now, the most important document, maybe, or the most intelligible at least, with what I call the phenomenology. Here, that's the view of Geist. This is one of my best ideas, one might say. That's what I think. Because it sheds a lot of light by simply offering the structure, by offering the structure which enables to think rigorously, to adopt a total view of what a society is, and it's really useful. I will just... Jeez. I have modified this document, I've improved the document with more categories. So here, at the lower part, this is Subjektiver Geist. In order to understand the human soul, the human consciousness and the human psyche, which emerges out of nature in a chronological and logical perspective, all these determinations have to be understood, namely what are human beings from an anthropological standpoint. They depend upon the climate, the season, the times of the day, which produces historically, here let us adopt a chronological perspective, the various sociobiological, anthropological and ethnographic differences. In other words, humans are determined by the climate of their continent, and they react to the climate, the season and the time of the day in terms of their behavior. There are sexual differences, males and females, and demographics, which is the product of sociobiology and the sexual dynamics, which is determined by ethnicity and age. So in order to understand any society, politically, economically, in terms of state, etc., one has to understand anthropology and demographics. I will just explain that taking into account the demographic aspect of any given society, it's so self-evident, but in the modern world it has become taboo in a way in the West. But the determinations of demographics in terms of ethnicity and age, they have an impact upon family life, culture, morality, economics, politics, sociology, geopolitics, etc., etc., rights and law, religion, etc., etc. Then evolutionary psychology, the study of the human soul and its behavior from an evolutionary perspective. The individual soul, so every singular individual belongs to a particular demographic, ethnographic group, but on a singular level he has his or her own morphology, which is in the broader sense the structure, the features of the body, his or her own physiognomy, that would be the features of the face, the mood, the affects, which is partly tied with the times of the day and the seasons, partly, not completely of course, but the mood switches depending on the times of the day and the seasons. I feel better since there is cold winter, for instance. Some people, they feel better with the summer sun. I enjoy the cold winter of continental Europe. The personality, so to understand humans, one has to understand the personality of each person, and it's partly determined by his or her own temper, talent, character, and habits. To understand, for instance, the habits of an individual or of an ethnic or anthropological group, they are reflected in the realm of morality and ethics and culture eventually. So the higher, the lower, here it's not a moral judgment, but the lower in the logical development is reflected later in the higher. And even at the highest level, in religion, art and philosophy. Sleep, as well, it's important. Psychoanalysis, psychiatry, so these are the determination of the individual soul. Then consciousness, there's self-consciousness, which is self-awareness. One poetic way of talking is that nature becomes aware of itself through human beings. Human beings are the self-consciousness of nature. In the poetic words of Matthew Seagal, from the channeled Footnotes to Plato, we are nature philosophizing. It's borrowed from Schelling, but desire and recognition, namely individuals, they have desires to complete themselves by acquiring an object. It doesn't mean material possession, but to be completed by an object, and the object can be the recognition gained by being acknowledged and recognized by others. Here, in a modern context of technology, that would be the social media and status. Humans have a desire and a need for recognition, to be recognized by other self-consciousnesses. That's why people who live alone with a dog or with cats, it's not really satisfactory, because the dogs and the cats, they have no self-consciousness. So to be appreciated by one's own dog or by one's own cats or a goldfish, it's not really satisfying. Domination, of course, the relationship between various self-consciousnesses bring about relationship of domination, and here in the realm of culture and morality, this is what I showed earlier with the woke ideology, oppression, victimhood, hierarchy, resentment, etc., it stems from there. When people are losers in the battle for recognition, they feel dominated and sometimes they revolt, etc. And the universal self, this is self-identification with a higher self, not in a personal sense, but in a sense to identify with one's own tribe, ethnic group, country, civilization, race, or eventually the whole of mankind. That's identity politics in a sense. Then we have the theoretical Geist, divided in psychology, language, and intelligence. So we have in psychology the broadest characteristic: introspection, imagination, and memory. We do not see very well, but I comment. Semiotics, which is the theory of signs and symbols and meaning. Linguistics, it includes grammar and body language. And finally, with intelligence, we have thought and IQ. And the practical Geist, it's the practical feeling, which is reflected in ethics and morality with feeling good about oneself, virtue signaling, the chemical releases within the brain when ethics and virtue is proclaimed, etc., or when a good action is performed. So that's the practical feeling, which gives a sense of duty. We have to help the poor, welcome the migrants, etc., etc. The will is the exteriorization of one's own inner determination through action, and liberty is the exteriorization of the will in the realm of institutions, because what is exteriorized by the will is one's own determination, and to be free, to act freely means to exteriorize the will. And on a collective level, a people can be said to be free when its collective institutions in the realm of rights, law, government, and social organization are their own. They are reflected. Then who constitute the people? Who has the power? Is it male or female or both? Does there have to be equality? When there are multi-ethnic societies, who has the power? When there are in every society age differences, the old, the young, who has the power? Those who have the dominant status. These are political questions. Yeah, but a free people gives itself its own set of laws by exteriorizing its will based upon its intelligence and all the previous determination. And here, my view is that the fundamental, the bedrock, the ground of a society is the family. So we have family, upbringing of children, men and women relationships, marriage and celibacy, and home economics, which includes the books that I have promoted by David Luter, for instance. And feminism, Michéa, the gender relations, they happen at this level, and they are reflected upon the rest of society. When there are problems in men and women relationships, when marriages are not stable, when men and women become single, when there are tensions, etc., it is reflected economically, demographically, in terms of morality, in terms of politics, expenses, at all levels, because everything is interconnected. To make a change in law by allowing abortion, because everything is interconnected, it will have an impact upon morality, demographics, marriage, gender relation, which will have an impact upon economics, or reciprocally. Women are allowed to enter the workforce, they feel more responsible and free, etc., which brings about changes in behavior. As regard to men, they feel more independent, but actually no, because it's the welfare state which takes the place of the husband. But then it has an impact upon demographics, because women, if they go in the educational system or to receive educational system, it's here, training is here. If they spend their most fertile years being trained to become civil servants, they will not produce a lot of children, which will have an impact on demographics, etc., etc. everything is interconnected. I just illustrate. Morality is a byproduct of practical feeling and partly a family upbringing, and culture and collective life, etc., recognition, etc. So here are the determination: ethics, virtue, responsibility, behavior, the notion of good and evil. Culture, it's partly customs, entertainment, and sport. It's tied with sociology, economics, and all the others, but predominantly it's a reflection in a realm of institutions of determination of temper, character, and habits of a people. Yeah. Economics, the simple determination, the GDP, which is the creation of wealth distribution, corporations and businesses and companies. Unemployment or employment, training, know-how, agriculture, industry, services. These are really the simple determination of an economic system. But when people talk about economics in the newspaper, usually they only talk about the prospect of growth and unemployment, how to reduce unemployment. But in order to understand economics, one has to understand all the other aspects. That's why the truth is the whole, and all the aspects have to be seen, at least in their fundamental determination, to make any events intelligible. Sociology, the division of labor in the economic realm, bring about differences in classes and recognition and status. Urbanization, here we have the example of gentrification, or inner cities, the no-go zones, the ghettos, the rich neighborhoods, etc. And housing, when there is a problem in housing, it can be tied with the banking system, with the immigration policy, with the low birth rate. It has to be contextualized. That's the utility of this document. Then order. Here we have law. In this, we have rights, property rights, contracts, and human rights. It's not always respected, but the fundamental rights to liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, in the case of America. Freedom of speech, freedom of association, right to bear arms. That would be the Constitution of the United States of America in its fundamental determination. Then, from the fundamental rights, law is derived. Civil and criminal law, which defines crime. The judicial system, the courts, are here to give sentences to criminals. And how to maintain order. There is the police, the mafia, and the gangs. Usually, in some countries, the mafia and the gangs, they are in the government. Terrorism, and the prisons. So law, order, rights, they are tied. But in order to understand crime, one has to understand demographics, psychology, culture, morality, economics, etc., etc. All the aspects have to be taken into account. If just one aspect is taken into account and not the others, that's either ignorance, incompetence, or manipulation. I need to explain crime by saying there are inequalities in wealth distribution. It may partly influence, but there are also inequalities in IQ, in behavior, etc., etc. In the breakdown of traditional morality, of religious morality, brings about increasing crime. All the aspects have to be taken into account, at least in their fundamental determinations. The banking system helps to finance the economy. It can finance the politicians and when they are corrupt. The states, in its fundamental determination, this is the constitution and the sovereignty. Who takes the decision on a given territory to tax and to vote and enact the laws and to force people to obey the laws. The government, with its various branches, legislative, executive, judicial, to vote the laws, to enact the laws, and to punish those who do not respect the laws. And the budget of the state, which is brought about by taxation, to help finance the infrastructures, the roads, the buildings, the hospitals, schools, railways, big building bridges, etc., etc., airports, etc., when they are publicly owned. It's financed by taxes, and the civil servants are hired by the state to perform bureaucratic duties most of the time. It includes the educational system, the healthcare system, the mental asylums, the retirement pension, and the insurance. It can be public or private, but usually it's partly publicly owned. Sometimes it's more private, depending on the economic policies. Politics. This is the debates, the parties, etc., etc., which are discussed in the media and the social media. There's a right to private life, which is protected by law usually, but with the mass means of communication, private life becomes public, etc., etc. The development of technology, which are a product of economic innovation, the fundamental determination, internet, big data, artificial intelligence, and transhumanism, and the exteriorization of politics on a global scale. This is geopolitics through diplomacy, military, and eventually the unfolding of history. And the deep state, the secret services, they are partly tied with the police, but actually they are on a higher level, partly tied with the banking institution. So the deep state, the secret services, the lobbies, which are secret groups of influencers, etc. Not influencers from YouTube, but influential groups, non-governmental organization, and globalist institutions like IMF, the World Economic Forum, the UNESCO, the UNICEF, the United Nations, Worldwide Fund, etc., etc., all the global institutions whose influence spreads on most states, who have to obey certain moral or legislative law like human rights and moral codes on a global level, because the reputation of each country is at stake in global affairs, etc., etc. And finally, environmentalism, with the resources, the material resources owned by a country in a way. It can be in the form of precious metals, of soils, of oil, gas, energy in various ways, wood, it can be a fertile land, resources from the ocean, rare earth, or all the various resources. Energy, it's partly tied with resources. And finally, transportation, which would be the roads, the means of transportation, airports, railways, etc., etc. This is the full view of what a society is in its fundamental determination, what people call the system. This is a view of the system, and everything is interconnected with also the realm of nature. And like nature, in order to see the whole, one has to understand each part, and in order to understand any part, one has to see the full picture. So it's just to help think better, more rigorously, and just to have the full view. It makes a lot of deception disappear. Deception can be self-deception or manipulation, but it makes a lot of problems disappear. And finally, art, religion, and philosophy, they are expressions, reflections of a society, of the spirit of a people, and eventually of world spirits. And here are the fundamental determination of art: architecture, sculpture, painting, cinema, literature, poetry, music. Music is the reflection of the soul of a people. Religion, this is the faith and the churches, which are part of the cultural and moral life of a people, in a way. And philosophy is the grasping of the totality, the conceptual understanding of the totality. Yeah. So this is how to think vaguely seriously about any topic. And now I will illustrate do we see? And the Fed by Ron Paul. Very good book. But in order to understand this book, he talks about money and banking, but Ron Paul also talks about morality, politics, economics, family values, etc. Because everything is interconnected, but it has to be done in a way rigorously and systematically. It also talks about globalism and geopolitics, because The bankers, they can corrupt the government in order to finance wars, to finance the welfare state, to debase the currency, which has an impact, a negative impact upon the price of housing, but also about the per capita, not the per capita GDP, but the purchasing power of the dollar or the money which is being debased. Then those who create money out of thin air, they can corrupt lobbies or groups of people to change the fundamental legislation, to print money. It can help finance all sorts of infrastructures, to make promises about healthcare, educational system, but then it has to be repaid by future taxation upon the next generations. It creates bubbles. If the money is being debased, there's a negative impact upon morality, because people are influenced and impacted to become more short-term, more have immediate gratification. So there's a lack of thrift and sparing and virtue and behavior, etc. And all the layers of society are being eroded. That's just an illustration. So yeah, I have shared this document. If it can help people think more clearly, yeah. I work for free. If you're good at something, never do it for free. Except if you're Batman. Where is Selina Kyle? That's a joke. Yeah. So here I promote books which have to be read and interpreted through the lens of the document that I've provided. Education, Free and Compulsory by Murray Rothbard. The educational system is interconnected with everything else. Utopia in Power, Sexual Utopia in Power. Sexual Morality, which has an impact upon marriage, celibacy, family life, upbringing, and ethics, has an impact upon the whole of society. If male and female relationships are being screwed up and broken in a way, and corrupted, the rest of society will be corrupted as well. I've showed this book already. And the Fate by Ron Paul. Bureaucracy by Mises. Blind Robbery. How the Fed, banks, and governments steal our money. Yeah. Spontaneous Order. I've partly drawn inspiration for the formal structure because this book is very well ordered. He talks about libertarianism, property, contract, money and banking, monopolies and cartels, insurance, healthcare, law and order, defense and security, transportation networks, education, poverty, environmentalism, the corporation. Yeah. So all the aspects have to be taken into account. Very good book. The minimum wage law. It has an impact upon the economy, of course, but it also upon the morality, upon sociology. It impacts certain groups of the population in terms of status, training, age, ethnicity, etc. He talks about this very well, Mr. Di Lorenzo. But here I provided the formal structure, the bell curve, the same. It's a very good book which shows the interrelatedness of social classes, ethnicity, intelligence, poverty, education, parenting, civility, crime, income, etc., etc. Yeah. The welfare state by the people, rebuilding liberty. Getting Libertarianism Right, that's the original title. Here it's translated in French. And finally, The Intellectual Regression of France by a libertarian author. Yeah. That's what I could say. But also, now other books. I will just show the books and then I will show the picture again, briefly. Bullshit Jobs, the French version. Planned Obsolescence, it's about planned obsolescence. The Death of Private Life. Here's a good book about autism that I've been partly reading, which has helped me a lot. That's partly a biographical testimony from an autistic person who suffers from Asperger. Game Over, The Anti-Political Revolution. Very good book that I haven't read, but I know it's a good book. Junk Food Strikes Back. Take Down the West. I don't know what the original title is, but yeah. Escaping from Consumer Society. Learn How to Sleep. So I've promoted this book, but now I will recontextualize through the help of this document, just to show the utility. The book. Oh God. The book. Yeah. Do we see? Okay. The book about sleep. It's from here. Sleep. If people slept better, they would be in a better mood, better temper, better health, which means the healthcare system, there would be a less need for taxation because people would be less sick, they would be more productive, in a better mood, maybe they would find love, build more stable marriages, they would spend less time watching porn or stupid videos on the internet. They would be more social. They would be better. So yeah, that's just an illustration. The book about consumers, society. The two books that I've just shown. Here it's economic in a way. It's economic production, so it belongs to the GDP. It brings about employment, but also in the realm of environmentalism. I should have added pollution, but actually it's kind of a waste of resources to build cheap, worthless product, worthless in terms of solidity and quality. Poor products, it brings about waste. It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time to produce useless scrap which break down and people are forced to buy them again a few months or a couple of years later. It has an impact upon morality, because if the money is debased, if the quality of the products being produced is debased, if sexual morality is being debased, everything falls apart because everything is corrupt. So planned obsolescence, it can be outlawed, but then it brings about an increase in state intervention. But simply if people start to buy useful quality products and to reuse and not to waste, if they are more ethical, more responsible, if they become aware of the problem of planned obsolescence on the internet by watching interesting videos, etc., they will think about the planet. Then they will be able to use a virtue signaling to say, hey, look, I take care about the planet because I do not buy useless crap, etc., etc. They will be more virtuous. They will climb into the social ladder of recognition by saying, look, I'm a great ecologist because I do not buy polluting products, etc., etc. Junk food is partly tied with habits, one might say, the habits of a people, the way it's an anthropological and individual determination, but it's also partly economic, it's partly tied with healthcare. If people eat junk food, if the economy is socialized, it means that people who are irresponsible, it's not their fault, but it's partly sociologically determined, partly with low IQ. If people are poor, from a deprived background with a low IQ, they have a stronger tendency to eat junk food and toxic food, which brings about excesses, health problems. They have to be taken care of by the state in a social healthcare, which means more taxes, which means a reduction of production, less incentives, more tension on a social level because the healthy people are forced to pay for the least healthy, which are here, they are the people who really suffer from accidents, and those who do not control their eating habits. It's partly because of evolutionary psychological reasons, but yeah, in a socialist society, if people are not behaving in a healthy way on a singular level, it has repercussions upon the whole of society, and then it justifies state intervention, etc., etc. The death of private life, the advent of the communication through the internet, it brings about contradictions with the rights to privacy. Private life is here, but precisely the development of technology brings about partly the end of private life, because there's mass surveillance, facial recognition, the big data, etc., etc. So we live in an age where private life is becoming difficult to maintain. Yeah, that's where Selina Kyle intervene. The clean slate, etc., etc. The bullshit jobs. It's in employment, civil servants, the economy, the bullshit job. They produce GDP, but do they produce wealth, not in a purely quantitative standpoint, but in terms of promoting well-being and useful things? If people are forced to work jobs they hate, to buy shit they don't need, which breaks down because they have been specifically designed to break down, it brings about pollution, stress, anxiety, depression, which is tied with the healthcare system, meaninglessness, waste of time. Yeah, there are so many jobs which are useless. If politicians cease to import random people who might bring crime, less criminals, which means less need for police, less need for insurance, less need for healthcare, less taxes, less civil servants, more ethics, more morality, etc., etc. Everything is interconnected. And crime begins with sociobiological, anthropological, demographic differences, then psychological, etc., etc. That's the useful aspect of this document. Yeah, I do not intend to improve this again. I will let people improve the document, shape their own worldview. I think it's the proper balance between accessibility without giving up on the intellectual requirements, the intellectual standards. Yeah. And now, I wanted to make a short video, but thorough nonetheless. Now, I will promote really the great books that I've bought on Amazon. It brings a little bit of pollution with the packaging, but I hadn't bought books for almost 5 months. But here, these really were exceptional books that I could not find at the local bookshop. The first one that I intend to read maybe tomorrow, Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. I know it's a great book because I've read the beginning. And here I explain. Mr. Oberton, in the context of modern France, he can be considered far right because he has common sense. Actually, he has culture, scientific culture, and common sense. He is a libertarian in a way, with nationalistic tendencies, but he is considered far right. But here, a great Afro-American economist, a modern French journalist, you mix them together, what do you get? Well, you get a translation of a book by Mr. Thomas Sowell with a preface by Mr. Oberton, and here, the anecdote. I will read this book. Usually I prefer to read books in their original language, but here I bought this book specifically because there was a preface by Mr. Oberton, Intellectuals and Race. Thomas Sowell, in the American context, I know he's conservative, Republican, libertarian leaning. In a country like France, an intellectual like Thomas Sowell would be considered far right. Mr. Oberton is promoting Thomas Sowell. That's the unity of the French far right with the American ideal of success based on character and not the colors of one's skin. Most of the time, it's nonsense. It's not nonsense, but most of the time it's just a nice, noble speech. But actually, when it works, it's really great. And Mr. Sowell is an example. And Mr. Sowell is a truly great American. Mr. Overton is a good Frenchman inspired by American ideas. And here, what happens in the process of spirit is that it's kind of comical, but in a good sense, that right-wing, modern, vigorous French intellectuals, they import Afro-American, the ideas of Afro-American scholars or intellectuals, but not any of them, but one of the best, to awaken the French. So here it's really kind of comical in the best sense possible that Mr. Thomas Sowell, in a country like France, if you had to classify him, he would be on the far right. Although he's just, it's not derogatory, he's just a common sense American, which is a praise. Someone like Ron Paul, Charles Murray, they would be considered far right. And Mr. Overton mentions them. So that's just to illustrate that we live in an age, he mentions Arthur Jensen, Richard Herrnstein, and Charles Murray. The Americans, they help the decadent Europeans of continental Europe, and Thomas Sowell is an example, a shining example of intellectual honesty, which is not found in the overwhelming majority of non-anthropological Europeans in continental Europe. I'm talking about the intellectuals, but even less in a lot, if not the overwhelming majority of anthropological Europeans, namely white people, native Europeans of Europe. Very, very few have the intellectual courage and honesty, either of Mr. Overton and even more of Mr. Sowell. So that's just to illustrate. Yeah. And finally, I will not comment. When I'm done studying the dismal science, even when it's written by great economists, economics is still a dismal science. I will grant myself, I already have actually, but I will grant myself the right to read great poetry. We might have our fair share of problems, Caroline, but you are truly great, Caroline. Not, I would say not always. Well, I will not. I'm in a good mood, but yeah, it was not the case recently. But yeah, I love your poetry, not just your poetry, but yeah. But that's the example of the kind of magical, in a good sense, but also partly ludicrous aspect of America. The Americans, they have to teach economics, well, to the decadent Americans of today, but to everyone actually, because knowledge is universal. So a good book about economics is universal. I've read the book by Mr. Di Lorenzo. I will read, maybe not thoroughly because it's really a thick volume, but at least the most important ideas. They have to teach economics. They have to teach intellectual honesty, and they bring great poetry. But Carolina, you're more than just an American. But yeah, that's what I could say. One hour and 43 minutes. I had the intention of producing another video. I will do this, I don't know when, but yeah. That was an introductory video about my new documents. I don't know when I post the video. I will rewatch it, the video first, to give the chronological structure. That's part of my ethics. Be the change you want to see in the world. I like order. I will try to put the proper order of the video. Yeah, that's what I had to share.